How does a kingdom built on divine promises and the courage of a giant slayer begin to rot from the inside out? And how does a father's beloved son become his most dangerous enemy? The story of King David and his son Absalom is one of the most heartbreaking tragedies of the ancient world. It isn't just a historical account of a rebellion. It's a gripping saga of family trauma, simmering resentment, and brilliant political scheming that pits father against son in a war for the nation's soul. We're going to explore the chain of events that led to Absalom's shocking betrayal, the devastating war he waged, and the father's gut-wrenching lament for a son he never stopped loving. To really understand Absalom's rebellion, you have to look at the deep wounds inside King David's own family. The story doesn't start on a battlefield, but in the gilded halls of the royal palace, with a horrific act of violence that would poison the house of David for years. David's eldest son, Amnon, became obsessed with his beautiful half-sister, Tamar. Tamar was Absalom's full sister, and both were known for their stunning looks. Consumed by his lust, Amnon faked an illness and, with his father's unknowing permission, lured Tamar to his rooms to care for him. Once she was there, he overpowered and brutally assaulted her. Shamed and heartbroken, Tamar pleaded with Amnon to marry her to cover the disgrace. But his lust had already curdled into loathing, and he threw her out. She tore her royal robe, a symbol of her status and virginity, and went to her brother Absalom, a walking picture of grief. King David was furious when he heard what happened, but his fury led to absolutely nothing. He didn't punish Amnon, his firstborn and heir. Was it weakness? A political move to keep the line of succession stable? We don't know for sure. But this inaction became the fertile ground for a deep and dangerous bitterness in Absalom's heart. For 2 full years, Absalom watched his sister's attacker walk free, and the injustice festered. He said nothing to Amnon, not a good word or a bad one, but a cold, patient hatred was taking root. The stage was set for revenge. 2 years after Tamar's assault, Absalom made his move. He hosted a sheep-shearing festival, a time of celebration, in a place called Baal-Hazor, and invited all the king's sons, making sure Amnon was there. When Amnon's heart was merry with wine, Absalom gave a chilling order to his men: "Strike Amnon and kill him. Don't be afraid. Have I not commanded you?" Just like that, the heir to the throne was murdered at his brother's command. The assassination sent shockwaves through the court. The other princes, fearing for their own lives, fled. Absalom, now a murderer, escaped to Geshur, his mother's homeland, and stayed in exile for 3 long years. Even in exile, the story is one of complicated emotions. The Bible says David mourned for his murdered son Amnon, but he also longed for Absalom, the son who had run. His was a house divided, a father torn between justice for one son and love for another. Eventually, David's commander, Joab, used a clever trick to convince the king to let Absalom return to Jerusalem. But the reunion wasn't a real reconciliation. For 2 more years, Absalom lived in the capital but was forbidden from even seeing his father's face. 5 years of total estrangement had passed. The chasm between father and son had become an abyss, and in that darkness, Absalom's ambition began to swallow his grief. When he was finally granted an audience, Absalom bowed before his father, and David kissed him. But that kiss wasn't a seal of renewed love. It was just the prelude to a much bigger betrayal. Absalom, now seemingly back in the king's favor, launched a masterful and patient campaign to steal the throne. He was a natural at public relations. He got himself a chariot, horses, and 50 men to run ahead of him, creating the perfect image of a powerful, accessible leader. He would stand at the city gate, the ancient version of a courthouse, and intercept anyone coming to the king for justice. With charisma and fake sympathy, he'd listen to their legal troubles and say, "Look, your claims are good and right, but the king hasn't deputized anyone to hear you." Then, the masterstroke. "If only I were the judge in this land, then anyone with a complaint could come to me, and I would give them justice." One by one, he stole the hearts of the people of Israel. He convinced them that David's administration was distant and ineffective, and that he was the true champion of the common man. For 4 years, this subtle, insidious campaign went on. He was playing the long game, building a network of supporters and waiting for the right moment to strike. That moment came when he asked David for permission to go to Hebron, David's old capital, pretending he had to fulfill a religious vow. David, completely unsuspecting, gave his blessing. But once in Hebron, Absalom sent secret messengers throughout Israel with a simple, electrifying message. "When you hear the sound of the trumpet, say, Absalom is king in Hebron." He had also invited 200 influential men from Jerusalem to join him. Men who came innocently, unaware they were being used as political props to legitimize a coup. Then came his most devastating move. Absalom recruited Ahithophel, King David's most trusted and brilliant counselor. Ahithophel's wisdom was said to be like hearing from God himself, and his defection made Absalom's rebellion feel unstoppable. Some scholars suggest Ahithophel was Bathsheba's grandfather, and that his betrayal was long-simmering revenge for the shame David had brought upon his family. When the news reached David, it hit like a death sentence. The rebellion was real, it was powerful, and it was led by his own son. With Absalom's army marching on Jerusalem, David, the great warrior king, made a stunning decision. He fled. To spare the holy city a bloody siege, he abandoned his own throne, weeping as he walked barefoot over the Mount of Olives. He left behind 10 of his concubines, a choice that Absalom, on Ahithophel's wicked advice, would use against him. In a shocking public display meant to signal a point of no return, Absalom slept with his father's concubines on the palace roof, in full view of all Israel. But David wasn't finished. He left a crucial spy behind, his loyal friend Hushai, whose mission was to infiltrate Absalom's inner circle and ruin Ahithophel's counsel. It was a battle of wits. Ahithophel, the master strategist, gave Absalom brutally effective advice. Attack David immediately, while he's weary and his followers are weak. It was a plan that almost certainly would have worked. But then Hushai stepped in. Playing to Absalom's ego, he argued for a much grander strategy. Gather a massive army from all over Israel, with Absalom himself leading them to guarantee a total and glorious victory. Blinded by pride, Absalom and his commanders chose Hushai's flawed advice. Ahithophel, recognizing instantly that the rebellion was now doomed, quietly went home, put his affairs in order, and took his own life. The delay gave David and his loyal forces just enough time to cross the Jordan River and regroup. The final, tragic showdown was set. The two armies clashed in the forest of Ephraim, and a brutal civil war broke out. The battle was fierce, and 20,000 men were killed that day. The forest itself seemed to conspire against the rebels, with its treacherous terrain claiming more lives than the sword. In the end, David's veteran soldiers crushed Absalom's army. As the battle raged, Absalom fled on his royal mule through the woods. Riding under the thick branches of a great oak, his head got caught in the tree, and he was left hanging, suspended between heaven and earth as his mule ran on without him. One of David's men found him helpless but refused to harm him, remembering the king's clear command before the battle. "Deal gently for my sake with the young man Absalom." But Joab, David's ruthless and pragmatic general, had no such hesitation. He took 3 javelins and thrust them into Absalom's still beating heart. Then 10 of his armor-bearers surrounded the hanging prince and finished the job. They threw his body into a pit in the forest and piled a great heap of stones over it. The rebellion was over. The prince was dead. When the news reached David, there was no celebration. There was only the shattering grief of a father. He went up to a chamber over the gate and wept. As he walked, he cried out those timeless, agonizing words, "Oh, my son Absalom, my son Absalom, my son Absalom. If only I had died instead of you, O Absalom, my son, my son." His grief was so overwhelming that it threatened to turn the victory into a day of mourning, and Joab had to sharply rebuke him to remind him of his duty to the men who had just saved his kingdom. The story of Absalom is a powerful lesson on how destructive pride, bitterness, and unforgiveness can be. It shows how unresolved family trauma can explode into a national crisis, and how even a man described as being after God's own heart could still fail so profoundly as a father. It's a tragic reminder that the choices we make and the justice we fail to deliver can create consequences that ripple through generations. What do you think? Was there anything David could have done differently to prevent this tragedy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you found this story compelling, please like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into the epic sagas of the Bible. David's lament for his rebellious son shows us the core of a father's heart, a love that endured even the ultimate betrayal. It's a conflict that still resonates. The tension between love and duty, between family and country, and the heartbreaking truth that some wounds, once inflicted, can never truly heal.